we're all likely to react with a level of emotion because we don't like to be pulled up on something. But I think, we also have to go, how fair is this feedback? How can I validate this? Is it real or is it somebody's opinion?
The question is from Thinking Focus.
Hi, I'm Rob.
Hey, I'm Ricky.
And the question is, how can I deal with the feedback that I'm getting?
Oh, interesting.
This is part of our mini-series, The Question Is, and it's exploring questions that often come up when we are coaching other people. So I'm sure you've been asked tons of feedback-related questions, Ricky. I know I have.
Well, actually, Rob, there's something I've been meaning to tell you.
I knew that was coming. You want to bring my insecurities out now, don't you?
Well, are there any?
Usually when I get feedback.
This is really one of those questions that people ask us all the time, that I keep getting this feedback. And of course, feedback can be, you can react to that feedback. You might not feel it's fair. You might not feel it's just. And that kind of triggers our emotional response to these things.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, there's always that question that goes in my mind, at least, that says there's no smoke without fire. And that might be more about me than anybody else, but it's also about how good is the feedback? Because quite often we have feedback where people say stuff and you kind of go, what am I supposed to do with that?
Yeah.
There's nothing I can actually achieve with that feedback. It doesn't help me to change something. But I think the key is going, all feedback potentially is a gift. You get the choice. That's the great thing about this, is you get the choice whether you want to accept that feedback and change and do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
But also perhaps be a little bit more aware in that if this is something that you keep hearing, then maybe there is something to it. And I always go, look, feedback is an opportunity for you to learn and grow, but forgive the person giving the feedback their clunkiness. Look beyond how they deliver the message and look at the message. Because I think quite often that's where the real nugget is here. That's where the real opportunity is here. And it's being able to kind of take that emotional response out and allow yourself a little bit of time to process. So what actually did this say and what did they mean? And maybe even qualify it.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, there's so many different strands to this, aren't there? Because it could be as simple as, it's a lot easier for me to take the messages from feedback when I have gone looking for feedback.
Yeah.
Purposefully looking for feedback because I'm welcoming it, as opposed to I keep on getting this feedback from somebody, or I keep on getting feedback from others. We've all been in a position, I'm sure, well, I know I have, I'm speaking for you, but I'm sure you have as well, where you're quite comfortable getting feedback from one individual or another, but actually the feedback that you get from person number 3, you never look forward to that feedback because it's either clunky or it's feedback that makes you feel uncomfortable, or you don't think it's well-founded. So, if you've gone asking for it, easier to accept because you want to. If you get given it all the time, then you have to do that little bit of processing, as you were just describing, because the first reaction is an emotional reaction.
It's interesting because we work with lots of clients, we coach lots of people, and I was working with a particular client, and I had some feedback for somebody, and I said, look, I've got some feedback, do you want it? And they went, yeah, that's fine. And they reacted very, very badly to the feedback,
right?
And literally carried it for years. And ironically, in terms of squaring the circle, I spoke to the HR director recently, who said they've changed.
Right.
And I'm going, I don't know whether I had anything to do with that. And I mean changed as in unrecognizable.
Right.
And I go, I don't know whether I had anything to do with that, but I might at least been the catalyst that started the reaction. And it's interesting, as coaches, you might deliver some feedback to people.
Yeah.
And you have to be prepared that says not everything's going to land, not everything's going to be received as you would hope it to be. Because my intention wasn't to upset. My intention was absolutely to help him to think about the way he was a little bit differently and come across with perhaps a little bit more impact than he was having. But it is interesting that we're all likely to react with a level of emotion because we don't like to be
Sure.
pulled up on something.
Sure.
But I think, we also have to go, how fair is this feedback? How can I validate this? Is it real or is it somebody's opinion?
Yeah.
Is it somebody's view of me because they're having a bad day and they just want to lash out at somebody, or is there some real? So the question for me always goes, if you're reacting to it and it's railing for you, or it's causing you to go, hang on a minute, I'm not sure this is fair. The key question for the coachee is going, well, how can you validate that?
Yeah.
What other sources can you find that can either support that or actually contradict that and make you feel that your reaction is either founded or unfounded?
Which I think points to, again, something that we come across a lot, where you can't just process feedback instantly. You need to reflect on it. So, if you're going looking for validation, like you were just describing, then that might be over quite a timeline, and you need to reflect on what's being said, whether or not it can be validated. But the other element to that is that quite a lot of the time, our emotional reaction to feedback is that we tend to think that it's a personal thing. This feedback is about me. Or is it really? Because it could be feedback about something that you've done or the effect that you've had on a situation or a person. So you're not going to be able to really get to the truth of that until you've reflected on it. And the reflection has to be quite sensible, quite emotionally, quite rational. And part of that may be the validation piece, but the other part is to actually sort of think about, what do I get from this feedback? How good or otherwise is this feedback for me? Because I can use it for growth. I can use it for improving the situation that I'm currently in, or the next time I come across that situation.
Yeah, and I agree. I think ultimately you got to recognize whenever you're getting feedback, yes, you have a choice. You can either reject it,
Mm-hmm.
or you can look for, what does this mean and where's the growth opportunity?
Right.
And I think in order to do that, and you use the term reflection, and that is absolutely crucial if you're going to grow, that says, okay, so what is the feedback telling me?
Mm-hmm.
What does that say about that? And I think you're right. It's not about you, the person. It's about your behavior or what you chose to do, decisions you made in a particular given moment. And then it's going, okay, so what is it telling me? So what would I gain or lose if I changed the feedback, or changed as a result of the feedback, I should say. So what is it telling me?
Right. Yeah.
And what's the consequence or impact of my behavior or my decision in that particular moment? And that will help. So did I make this based on fact and evidence, or did I make it on my gut reaction?
Mm-hmm.
Did I just drop into autopilot and just go, oh, we've always done it this way, let's do it that way? Or actually, did I take a balanced view of how I might do this? And,
Mm-hmm.
that they're kind of some things that we would encourage people to think about. What is the impact of this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Before then going, okay, now what are you going to do about that then? So you have some choices here, whether it's to go validate the feedback, whether it's to look at how you might change, and you might need some help with that, because behavior is not something that's easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
So you might need some coaching support in order to do that. But you don't have to accept the feedback. You could just reject it, ignore it, and move on.
Yes, absolutely. And it's quite interesting that this question comes to us in coaching sessions, because I think it points to somebody going, well, I did receive this feedback and I don't know whether I should ignore it or I should pay attention to it. And, okay, that's interesting. So what was the feedback then? And how have you dealt with this before? And what else might have been going on? Think about the reasons why you got this feedback. So, I was in a conversation just last week with somebody about this. I'm receiving some feedback. Okay, is it somebody you get feedback from all of the time? Yes, it is. I've got this particular bit of feedback. I don't know how to deal with it. All right. So what's the feedback telling you? Exactly like you've just gone through, because you're looking at that question and then you're thinking about the implication and ultimately the choice, as you've just described really well, about, so you could do something with that then or not. But now what are you going to do? Make a decision on the back of that.
I think that's absolutely right. And I think, where my head goes in terms of pulling this together is going, just be mindful where the feedback's coming from,
Mm-hmm.
because you can get seduced because it's from somebody important or even your boss, that you suddenly believe it carries more weight.
Yeah.
You could have feedback coming from somebody that you don't, you may not have a good relationship with, you may not even believe that their opinion is valid, and therefore you might be too dismissive of the feedback. So it's always trying to keep that open mind,
Mm-hmm.
and using that reflection approach of what, so what, now what, as a way of kind of processing that through that time and distance that you described. Just take some time out to think this through and say, what does it really mean? Because the reality is, we frame this as, how can I deal with the feedback I'm getting?
Mm-hmm.
What we tend to get is, you'll never guess what they've said now.
Yeah.
I can't believe it. This is, it's really, I was going to swear then, but it's really getting on my nerves. And it's always remembering that feedback is something that you get to choose, but more often than not, there's something in there that you can take from it.
Absolutely.
The question is from Thinking Focus.
One of the techniques I came across a number of years ago, which I quite like, is think of all the things you want to do, and then imagine that you can put them into tasks into 4 layers. The most impactful tasks are the highest layer, and the least impactful tasks are the lowest layer. And then when you look at the tasks through that lens, where would you like to spend your time?
To find out how Thinking Focus can unlock the potential within your organization, go to www.thinkingfocus.com, where you'll discover more about the work we do, helping our clients increase productivity and enable change.